All right, let's talk about the Detroit Lions here. Look, this entire offseason, we spent a lot of time talking about how smart Brad Holmes and the entire Lions organization is. But I think they made one move that slid under the radar that I think is one of the best moves any team has made this entire offseason when you take a step back and evaluate it. Going into this offseason, of course, a big area of concern for the Lions was tackling on the defensive side of the football. They were not very good. But one addition to the secondary this offseason that they got at a very cheap price is actually become one of the better tackling players in his position in the National Football League, and that is the addition of former Raiders cornerback Amik Robertson. Let's go ahead and pull up this little report that we put together based on some data from Pro Football Focus. Since Antonio Pierce was hired as interim head coach in the middle of last season, Robertson's performance accelerated. He averaged a 76.1 tackling grade according to Pro Football Focus. The Lions, as a defense in 2023, finished 21st in tackling the 49.6 grade, and there were actually a lot of worse contributors to that tackling grade, namely cornerback like Jacobs, for example. He was abysmal in his tackling grade according to PFF, which of course matched what you Lions fans saw watching him play, certainly in big moments down the stretch. So the Amik Robertson signing, it didn't make a lot of moves. There was a report, Antonio Pierce, saying he was really sad to see him go, but I think this may be one of the best, one of the more underrated moves of the offseason. I'm going to go ahead and call it a huge steal for the Lions, because not only did they get an underrated player at a discount price, they also got a player whose number one strength, his number one skill set is exactly what the Lions need to address. This was a phenomenal move by Detroit. I'm really curious, though, Miles, what your thoughts are on this. But first, Lions fans, in the comment section below, now that we're a few weeks away from the start of free agency, we can see basically 99% of all the moves the Lions are going to make up to this point. What was your favorite move the Lions have done? There's been a lot of interesting moves. This is a guy they cut, guy they signed, whatever it may be. Give us your favorite Detroit Lions move up to this point in the comment section below. But Miles, let me throw it over to you now. What do you think of the addition of Robertson and everything he could bring to this Lions defense?
Yeah, Nick, I think this is a really interesting move, and I think it's a great one for the Lions to have made, because you look at the Lions, outside of tackling, they were the weakest at corner and secondary in general last year. So adding more depth and adding more surefire tackling to a position that was also really weak, addressing two weaknesses with one guy, I think is a really great move by the Lions. I think that you look at a guy like Antonio Pierce, he played in the NFL for a while. He knows talent evaluation. Coming through college, he's able to key in on guys and really see who's very good. Amik Robertson was one of those guys that, like you said, ever since Antonio Pierce took over, he was able to develop this guy, and he got significantly better under the tutelage of Antonio Pierce. And it reminds me of just how great of a talent evaluator Antonio Pierce is. So if he is going to miss a guy like Robertson, you know there's a lot of potential here for this guy. It reminds me of another guy that Antonio Pierce brought in. Jack from the Patriots came over to the Raiders. He was able to bring this guy in, kind of take him under his wing, get his off the field issues under check, and then this guy burst out and have one of the best seasons that he's ever had. So I think Antonio Pierce is a great evaluator of talent, and I think it's great for the Lions to pick up on that and grab some guys from them who really had a spike in their rankings ever since Antonio Pierce came into play, because this is a guy who knows how to get the best out of players.
Well, and it's one of those things, right, where the comp that a lot of people give to Antonio Pierce stylistically is, of course, Dan Campbell with Detroit. Both former players, both old school mentality, players, coaches, right? That's the kind of mentality. So when people look at Antonio Pierce unlocking talent and recognizing players and putting them in positions to be successful, it makes sense that Dan Campbell would fall right along those same lines. So again, it's one of those things that just makes a lot of sense for a former Raider who picked up his performance under Antonio Pierce to slide in perfectly with the Detroit Lions. But when you break down the dollars and cents aspect of the signing, it looks absolutely ridiculous. So according to overthecap.com, Amik Robertson, based on 2023 numbers, has a valuation of $3.3 million. Now, basically what that means is overthecap.com, they look at a player's age, productivity, position, performance, go through all the different factors and variables and say, okay, this is what his cap hit should theoretically be worth based on 2023 numbers, right? $3.3 million. In 2024, he will count against the Lions $2.8 million. Big steal there. And in 2025, it jumps up to $6.4 million. But again, we're talking 2 years removed from that $3.3 million number, 2 years of cap inflation going up 10, 15%. That's basically what it goes up now. That's going to be a fair price. So year one, big steal. Year two, fair price for a corner whose literal best trait is exactly what the Lions need. This is one of the more underrated moves any teams have made this offseason. We always focus on the big headlines, what moves, dominate the media, the talking heads, all that kind of aspect. But it's the teams that address their weaknesses without spending a whole lot of money, like the Lions have done here, that really win the offseason. And I think this move is a perfect example of that.